Radio Experience Podcast. Here is your host, Michael.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I am on this one. I want to talk about Chelsea's struggles. They've struggled badly. This loss last week to Tottenham, that was tough. That was really tough. Tough to watch if you're a Chelsea fan. Obviously, if you're a Tottenham fan, you're pretty excited about that. But as a Chelsea fan, that was really rough. So I just want to begin. So I think that Chelsea should stick with their manager despite a string of gutting and disappointing results. Now, I have read some communications online that talk about his lack of passion because he's not a person who yells or screams or, gives these fiery press conferences that so many people are used to seeing. But he also consistently shoulders the blame for his team's lackluster performances. But I don't understand how those two factors can mean that he isn't fit to be the manager for Chelsea. Most people, in my opinion, really need to learn what goes on behind the scenes, behind his closed-door meetings with the players, and whether or not he screams or yells at them then. And even if he doesn't, does that mean he's not a good manager because he doesn't yell and scream? I don't understand that one at all. Regarding him shouldering the blame, is he supposed to tell the media that his team sucks and they aren't trying hard? I can't think of a faster way to lose a locker room than by throwing your players under the bus every time you have a bad game or every time you don't win. What's he going to say? Well, not on me. I had a good game plan. They just didn't execute. They're trash. You're not going to win over your locker room that way. In fact, they'll probably lose it much faster. Sticking with Potter through these challenging times is the right thing to do because he is considered, or he was considered when they brought him in, he was a project manager, meaning he was hired to execute the new ownership's vision of what they want this project to be here at the club as far as the injection of youth and getting these young players on these long-term. I think I've seen Aaron West, he said these 360 deals that they signed at Death Row Records. But in all honesty, that was the vision that they had for the club. And that is the vision that they hired Potter to execute. Now, he cannot do that without their complete and unwavering support, at least in my opinion. But also firing two managers in 6 months speaks more to the club's leadership and ownership group and their ineptability to choose the right person than it does in the inability of the manager to coach a team. It's a terrible look for the club because those actions, firing two managers in 6 months, that indicates incompetence in making the correct hire. And it also can indicate instability within your organization. Your next guy that you bring in, you're going to give him the same assurances that, oh, you're our guy, we got your back. But he'll always be looking over his shoulder because when he has a string of 3 or 4 consecutive losses, most managers worth their salt won't sign up for that because they'll be looking over their shoulder. Man, am I going to get fired? I'm trying real hard. So I think we should keep that in mind. But also their inability to score goals is the main reason for their struggles. Like, I'm not going to act like everything is sunshine and roses. I understand that they need to score goals, but the goals should flow with the talent that they have on that roster. That's a pretty obvious thing. Another eye-catching symptom of their ineptitude is their need for in-game adjustments and their over-rotation of their starting 11. No team has scored fewer Premier League goals than Chelsea since November. And also the fact that just a few weeks ago, they were ready to ship out Hakim Ziyech on loan to PSG on, say, a Thursday. And then when they had the paperwork issue because they were working on the Enzo transfer, then all of a sudden he remains at the club and is available to start on Saturday. So you're sending mixed messages. Is he the guy for your squad or is he not? And if he's out of the squad, then why are we starting him? If he's so expendable, if you're so ready to ship him out, why start the guy? I don't understand. With the depth that they have at his position specifically, it makes no sense to even play this dude if all you want to do is ship him out of town. The best thing I can think of is that you are only playing him to increase his value later for sale. But the fact that he's not playing well does not increase his value. In fact, I can argue that it decreases his value. It simply makes no sense to me, especially when the club has shown the willingness to rotate the starting 11. It's simply head scratching to me that we see this guy starting games and not being subbed off when he struggles. And that's the kind of stuff I'm getting at when I'm talking about in-game adjustments. The Tottenham game, we can point to the fact that he got the almost red card that should have been a red card that wasn't a red card, and I have opinions about that as well, but I don't think I'm going to get into them right here, right now. But either way, he should have been subbed off at the half. The fact that he started the second half, I don't understand what is going on there. I also have to point out that Kai Havertz is not a striker. He's not. It's not his best position, and he needs to be better at it to warrant him starting week in and week out at striker. If you need goals and Aubameyang is on the team, and hear me out here, then what is wrong with giving him the same chances that you give Ziyech to play through some of those poor performances that he's had, or the same chances you've given Havertz to play through these string of poor performances he's had at striker? He has not played particularly well. I understand that, and I'm talking about Aubameyang. But neither has Havertz. Havertz is not the striker that you want him to be. I don't know what his best position is, and possibly his best position is the place where you're playing Joao Felix, and I can argue that Joao Felix is better at that spot, which then makes Havertz an expendable asset. I don't know. Again, I don't have all the answers, but to me, Havertz should not start at striker anymore. You brought Aubameyang in, then you use him at striker, and you let him ride this thing out. Or start David Detro Fofana. Now, I know he's a young guy, but he's going to get games under his belt by playing. And he's a natural striker. And he did tear it up. And I think, was it the Norwegian League? I think it was the Norwegian League. He was tearing it up. I looked at his football reference page. That dude gets goals, or he was getting goals. Very good player. I think he just needs to figure out the Premier League a little bit and he'll be all right. It's not like they don't have options or solutions at striker, but they have to figure out how to get Havertz out of the striker position and get pure goal-scoring striker in the starting striker position and stick with them. Because I don't understand why we're sticking with certain players that aren't performing well, but we're rotating other positions. If we're going to stick with a guy, then let's stick with a striker and give him a real opportunity.
All right, wait a minute.
If you are listening to this and you haven't subscribed to the show, shame on you. If you are listening to this and you haven't followed me on any of my socials, shame on you. The links to the socials are in the description or the show notes of the episode. And I really, really would appreciate you coming over and giving me a follow. Thank you. Injuries. I know they've dealt with injuries as well at a historic rate. Their woes are so bad there that I'm not going to spend time right here at this moment documenting how bad those injuries were. But I do want to mention that some of their best proven veteran players are still consistently missing games. There's still no Conte, Pulisic, and you can call him proven or a veteran, or you can question that if you want to, but that dude's a baller. Kovacic, he's been missing games. And Mendy, he's still missing games. And I know people fell out of favor with Mendy because of the poor form he had at the start of the year, and some of that leaked into the World Cup, but I still think he's the better keeper than Kepa. And Thiago Silva, who also may be out with an MCL sprain that he suffered in the Tottenham game. Injuries, they're devastating. Everybody's also dealing with injuries. So Chelsea's not the only club to deal with injuries, but their stuff is at a different level. One of the main reasons for the historic January transfer window, where 600 million pounds or dollars or whatever currency you want to use, that 600 million of those things was spent to improve the squad. One of the reasons why that much money was spent was because that many players were injured, and they needed to bring all those guys in just to field a worthy 11. That's how bad it is. And half of their roster was also recovering from post-World Cup hangover. I'll have a link to an episode that I made about the post-World Cup hangover in the show notes as well, to refresh your memory if you don't know, or to educate you if you don't know what the post-World Cup hangover is. But you had guys who got hurt at the World Cup. You had guys who played a ton of minutes during the World Cup. That was other reasons to rotate your squad. And I would love to make some parallels to a similar situation, or make this thing more relatable or more understandable. But the fact of the matter is, these circumstances are so unusual that I can't draw parallels to say, oh, you remember that time when this club struggled like that, or that club struggled like this? You're going through sanctions, ownership, coach, new coach, preseason, injuries, World Cup, in-season, transfers of a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds. Like, this stuff is crazy. Chelsea, they're one thing. They're setting the trend for these kinds of issues. Maybe someone in the future will be able to draw their parallel to this, but this is not something that is similar to any other situation I can think of, especially in recent memory. And, I also understand that Chelsea fans are not used to the club being in 10th place at the end of February. That's not a Chelsea thing. It's a really good year at Crystal Palace. No shot at Crystal Palace, but I'm just being honest. Like, they're also not used to this severe lack of goal scoring. That's saved for the Wolves, Wolverhampton. That's not a Chelsea thing. And to be honest, history supports the argument that Chelsea should fire their manager. That dramatic move, actually, it's been key to turning things around at other clubs, at floundering clubs. The most recent example that Chelsea have to point to is the fact that Lampard got fired and Tuchel came in, and when that happened, he took that same squad of players that pretty much got Lampard fired, and he turned around and won the Champions League with that team. I also think it's important to point out that Tuchel was not necessarily fired because of the on-field product or the lack of results. I think maybe that was a factor, but not really. The biggest factor was his relationship, or lack thereof, with the new ownership group and their differing visions for how the club should be run and what the future of the club looks like. So keep that in mind as well. But do you remember what it was like, what the world was like when Tuchel got fired? Name after name was floated out as a potential replacement. You had people pulling out Zidane. You had people pulling out Mourinho to return to the club. You had the regular old Pochettino. You get the same run of the same three names every time a big job becomes open. But none of those guys make sense. And frankly, Zidane, who's probably the favorite of the aforementioned group there, he doesn't even speak English. So I think Premier League clubs are off the table altogether. And frankly, that would be a tough sell. But the speculation didn't get too out of control when the job came open last time, because it got out very quickly that Potter was their guy. The point is, it's been hard out here for teams that have recently fired their coaches to find that perfect replacement. Ask Southampton how the coach search went. Ask Leeds about the coaching market. It's not all sunshine and roses out here in the coaching market. If you are going to fire your coach, realistically, who are you going to bring in to replace him? And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you for listening to the show, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Michael Nance audio experience. Subscribe to the show so you never miss a future upload.